Hello, it's Dovalo here with another interactive card tutorial. Today we're going to make this fun slider card with the paint brushes dynamics from the May Vault release. When we pull on the slider panel, the brushes move and reveal strips of paint in the three primary colors, as well as a three-part sentiment. You can easily adapt the idea to a slimline panel with just one brush and a longer sentiment. Also, you could decorate the panel with ink splatter or the abstract art or distressed pattern stamp sets. So let's start by assembling the paint brushes. I used cement, gray, craft and silver shine cardstock, and here I'm stacking two of each of the structural elements with liquid glue to make them sturdier. Next, I'm drawing some wood texture on the handles with three brown Copic markers, E57, E55 and E53. These are really dry and in desperate need of some TLC, but they got the job done. To make the bristles stand out a little more, I just slightly scribbled over them with a pencil and used my fingers to rub the graphite into the paper. I found it easier to assemble the brushes by adding a little piece of washi tape to the back. That way I could find the perfect spot for the metallic element without needing an extra hand. Fun fact that I looked up, this little metal band that connects the bristles to the handle is actually called a ferrule. Isn't this the cutest little thing? Now we need to cut some 1-inch tall windows on the main panel, which I cut with the largest die from the A2 stitched rectangle stack set 1 dynamics. I used the pull tab from the interactive up and down dynamics, but if you don't have it or any suitable rectangular dies, you can just use a craft knife. This die is too long for our panel, so I'm doing some partial die cutting by moving the upper cutting plate. And to achieve the same result 3 times, I'm drawing a line where I need to place it. I forgot to do it beforehand, so here I'm drawing a line to know exactly where to place the left edge of the die. And let's skip ahead a bit. Here I'm using my craft knife to finish the cut. I could have just flipped the die and ran it through my machine again, but I didn't want to have to do it 3 more times and flatten my panel even more. We don't need much foam tape for this slider card, only 3 strips which are about 3/16 of an inches or 5 millimeters wide. With a metallic ruler and a craft knife, I can easily divide this Scotch tape into 4 strips. After adhering them to the back of my main panel, I measured the space for the slider panel, and it's 3 7/8 of an inches wide and 4 15/16 of an inches tall. It should fit snugly so that it doesn't wiggle when we slide it. Next, we'll die cut a 1.5-inch circle and stamp the word pull from the interactive label stamp set on it. I used Caribbean Sea premium dye ink to match my card base, which you can see in the background in just a moment here. I applied liquid glue to the top 2/3 of the circle and adhered it to the back of the slider panel. It was just easier to do while it was inserted in its place. And to make sure that there are no edges that could snag, just rub it with a bone folder. Off camera, I die cut a second same-sized white panel, which I've temporarily adhered to the back of the main panel so that I can trace the insides of the rectangles and plan my sentiment. It wasn't really necessary, and I ended up erasing the lines as soon as I had placed the stamps in my MISTI, or rather 3 pieces of the stamp from the Straight from the Heart set that I butchered because I was too lazy to do some simple masking. Speaking of masking, I added some post-it tape to the edges of my second panel so that they wouldn't get dirty for this next step. Just swipe the chosen inks across the panel. I used Red Hot, Lemon Drop and Cornflower premium dye ink and repeated as many times as needed. It doesn't have to be perfect. Another option would be to stamp any of the larger brush strokes from the abstract art stamp set, although they are a lot skinnier and might not give the same effect. I can't stress enough how important it is to use a generous amount of starch or talcum powder to get a perfect heat embossing. Next, some Versamark ink, and then white embossing powder. Of course, you don't want to overdo it with the heat either. Okay, we're almost done. Let's continue on to the assembly of all of the elements. After adhering the secondary panel to my card base with some score tape, it's time to adhere the main panel on top. There. Now we can insert the slider panel and attach the brushes to it. They will also act as a stop, so there's no need for any cellophane strips this time. I'm not sure about the placement of the first brush, so I'm getting rid of a little bit of the stickiness with my hand. As you can observe, I need to move the brush about 1/8 of an inch to the left. So I trim the piece of foam tape with my scissors and try again. There. This time it looks good, so I can go ahead and adhere the rest of the brushes. And sorry that my big head gets in the way here. I didn't want to bore you, so I finished adding the brushes off camera. I also added some matching enamel dots, which in this context look like perfect little drops of paint. Thank you so much for stopping by. Don't forget to check out the description box for the measurements and list of MFT products. Bye bye, hasta la próxima!